Okay, I'm going to try my best to keep us to time because I don't want to stand in the way of food. Don't apologize. So there are a couple of slides about the grandparent caregivers program, as she was just mentioning, and we do talk a lot with clients at intake about this. So we may have already sent over some materials, and of course you would see specifics in any case that you take. So switching gears, we're going to talk about client realities and cultural humility. And so some of this may be obvious. Some of this might be already on your mind. Some of this might be things that you've already thought about in working with, low-income populations. And some of this might be new. So in terms of materials, tab 2 is where you would find some of the related materials for this section of the training. Again, that's your flash drive. The table of contents is handout number 4. We're addressing this because, we're dealing with families, right? This is family law. There may be conflict at different levels. Some of our cases are more contested than others, for sure. And it's really unavoidable for our personal experiences not to come into play. That's just naturally going to happen. And so the question is, how can we ensure that our unconscious, our implicit biases are not negatively or inappropriately impacting our work on a case? And a lot of this is really about checking ourselves. So we want to talk about how the issues might arise in this work. We want to certainly give you some context for the clients that we're serving, explore some best practices, and talk about some tips working with clients. So what are your biases? We all have them. This is not about having bad intent or being bad people, right? We all carry bias. That's just a fact. When we think about these cases, I'm not going to read through this slide. The next couple of slides list a number of areas where you could have bias, right, related to families. So you can think about how you were raised. Maybe you have a bias for or against that, depending on what your experience was. Just general ideas around parenting. There's a number of things. Here's a list of just some of them. And so when you're representing a caregiver in a custody case, if you do other custody work with us, representing the best interest of a child, you're working with parties who may have different views. And then, of course, you may have your own experience. And it can all be different. So this is where bias can kind of creep up or come into play on any given case. From the physical custody to the legal custody, everything. So client realities, that's a critical first step in your case as you're getting to work with families. Families are unique. Each family is different. And you heard Diane talk about the legal orders, and you could drill down and have something really specific all the way down to that backpack with 2 pairs of underwear, right? And for some families, that's really what you're going to need. And in other families, you're not going to need that level of detail at all. Every family is unique is the point. So getting a sense of what the realities are of the family that you're working with on any individual case is a great first step, and that's going to be part of your learning as you're getting to know the family. And the reality is that there are issues that come up in all types of families from all different backgrounds, but we do see certain common issues that come up in the cases where we're serving low-income populations in the district. So let's talk just for a second in terms of the non-nuclear families. So I referenced that article that we have, The Rise of the Grandfamily. And so it actually gives you some statistics about not only the rise in grandparents and grandfamilies across the country, but the number in DC. So I think they give you a 2017 number that I think was based on the census data. And there were only over 7,200 kids in DC raised by grandparents. The numbers have been on the rise nationally. This is something that is very, very common. And again, this gives rise to the cases that we need your help with because there are a lot of grandparents for different reasons taking care of their grandchildren. So certainly be thinking in that non-nuclear way when you think about family and just viewing family within their own dynamic. There are lots of issues that our caregiver clients are balancing, and so we want to take those into consideration for a whole host of reasons. They can be balancing issues that are really just on their own plate, separate from the child they're caring for. They also may have a child or children with special needs and different things that they are juggling just to meet the child's needs. And so here's a graphic that displays both of those things. These are things that are common issues on our clients' plate in any of the cases that we're handling at Children's Law Center. So everything from housing stability to violence, from child care to mental health, education. You may see a number of these on your client's plate in some form or fashion. And again, every family is unique, so what it might mean for that family or for your representation is going to vary by the case. But these are things to be thinking about and to be aware of. Ultimately, living in poverty, it's a huge impact on the family. There are some statistics on the screen and in your notes. I'm not going to read those aloud. I will note that 1 in 4 kids in DC are living in poverty, and so the statistic you'll see, we pulled from the guidelines that are updated each year. We're looking at just over 25,000 for a family of 4. So this is significant. So, families are lacking their own resources to meet a lot of those needs that, I just mentioned are on their plate. And so you're going to rely then on the community more when you don't have resources of your own. And ultimately, the issues that our clients are facing when they're actually relying on the community is that that's not there to meet their needs either in many significant ways. So we have families who are struggling with unmet mental health needs. That's something Children's Law Center does a lot of systemic advocacy. We have a policy team, and mental health is one of the issues that we do a lot of work with and around. And so we know that we don't have sufficient quality resources in the district. And so to have unaddressed mental health needs just in and of itself, whether it's with the child or any other member of the family, can have a significant impact on the functioning of the family. It can have a significant impact on parties getting along, being able to communicate and work together. So there are all sorts of ripple effects. Of course, we talk about housing conditions cases and children who are sick from issues in the home. We have a huge crisis in affordable housing in DC. So it's not just the lack that families have, the poverty that they're living in, but then also the extra things on their plate, the lack of resources and things in the community to help them navigate services. So this practically impacts the family in ways that you would imagine, getting the services that they need. Often, we have these fantastic caregivers. It's amazing, they're stepping in to raise their child's child or, someone else that's a family friend, someone that they know, their kin, and they're doing their best to provide stability, to provide that loving home to a child. But it's hard to navigate the systems that are in place, and it's hard to be able to adequately meet their needs. So we have a bullet on here, and we say this in a couple of places. If your client is frustrated, don't be surprised by that. Don't take that personally. There's a lot of reasons frustrated, and the court system may be part of that. So you'll learn more as you're working with any individual family, what their experience has been. And unfortunately, it's going to be really common to be running into frustration. So when you're living in lack and then relying on your community to help fill the gap, but that's not happening, frustrating is kind of an understatement. So what do we mean by cultural humility? So I said earlier, you're thinking about checking yourself, and I want to unpack that just a little bit. So cultural differences exist. I think we all know that. So we're sort of acknowledging in the first step that these dynamics are at play. And that happens all across the case, from you as the attorney representing your client, to your client, the other family members, the court, any other professionals. It's across the board. So we have to understand our own culture, assessing ourselves, checking ourselves. This is these issues around parenting, whatever this dispute is in the case. Is there something where I have my own personal preference based on my life experiences that's coming up for me? Am I sort of thinking, I kind of side with this side of the conflict? Is that about me, or is that about this case? Is it about this family? Because ultimately we're looking to help families reach an agreement that's going to be in the best interest of a child, and that, us lawyers in the court system can back out and you've got something in place that's going to work for them. So we really do not want it to be about us, because it isn't about So recognizing these other systems and cultures and integrating that work and respecting that is critical in the representation. So that's part of being culturally full. As a lawyer and a counselor to your client, just spending a few minutes about the client counseling piece. So that's really important. And, as you meet every family and individual families, thinking about whether they've been involved with the court system in some kind of way. DC Superior Court is our trial court. So whatever, you're going to court in DC, that's it. Now, maybe they weren't there for a family court case. It could have been something else, but still, that's been an experience with the court system. It's the same building. You're going down to 500 Indiana. So you want to talk through the process for this case, get a sense of what your client's experience has been. And maybe they've heard things in the community from others. Town's not that big, so get their perspective and take the time to talk through the process. Don't take for granted things that, your client may not have any reason as a non-lawyer, to know, or someone who hasn't been in this situation before. Going over your roles and responsibilities. So we've got a couple of tips here. On the one hand, talk about, really drill down who's gonna do the communication on the case. Keeping in mind that your client's probably got a lot of other things going on, that might be a big relief that you're going to be the one, communicating with the other party. They don't need to worry about that. They have an advocate in their corner. They've got somebody who's going to be able to help out with some of this conflict or just some of the logistics, even if it's not that conflicting or contested of a case. Tell your client what they should report to you. That's just good setting expectations. Hey, if this happens, definitely call me for that. We put up a couple of examples. You've got a service provider coming out. Somebody's asking them to sign something. A meeting gets scheduled that may be related. Maybe you'll be involved, maybe you won't. But you want to set, some expectations for your client communicating with you. I told you we say this a couple of times. If the client's frustrated, please be understanding of that. There's a whole lot of reasons for that, and it's not about you. You are there to help, and our clients are really, really grateful for that help. So don't try your best not to take it personally, knowing that we're also beings. Ensuring good communication, that's huge. So this is a place that I do think, thinking about other cultures, thinking about other populations. There may be some big differences. We do hear this from many of our pro bono partners in terms of communication. So clients may be using phone minutes. They may run out. They may change phone numbers pretty frequently. And so you want to really start off with a robust conversation about how you reach your client, good times for them to speak with you by phone. They may have a job where that they're not going to be able to talk to you while they're at work. That could really have some negative ramifications for them. In terms of texting, I would say that tends to be pretty successful. And sometimes clients might not be able to talk on the phone, but they can access Wi-Fi and then they can text. So think about all the different modes of communication. Think about backup numbers. Don't take for granted they have your information. Make sure they know how to reach you. And in terms of meeting, be thoughtful about location and what is best or preferred by your client, because heading out to a law firm office can bring a lot of extra barriers in terms of the time to get there with public transportation, the cost to get there with public transportation. On the flip side, going to a client's home may be a more or less comfortable space for them, depending on just how they feel about their neighbors. It could be a whole host of things. So again, every family has their own individual needs, preferences, etc. So you'll talk to your client about these things so you have a sense of the dynamics for that individual case. And this is all great stuff to talk to your mentor about too. Sometimes pro bono attorneys might not come to us quickly when they have communication problems. We're like, no, we do this. We can mentor around that and give you some tips if for some reason you're not getting through or have any challenges that arise. So if someone is temporarily out of touch, again, not you. We don't find that is indicative of their interest in this case, in moving things forward and working with you. Usually something else has come up. They may have another fire on their plate that they've had to deal with. So please, do your best to be patient and understanding, but also, reach out to us if for some reason, you're out of touch for a significant period of time. There are more slides here. I won't read all of them off so we can head to lunch. But think about, as advocating for your client, think again about these different cultural experiences and preference and your bias can come in. Being client-centered, think about, if having a non-nuclear family is really, part of their culture, see that as a positive. And if you're hearing anyone else, kind of speaking that as a negative, those are pause moments. And it's good to emphasize what is positive, and our clients stepping up, and these multi-generational households that are coming together to care for a child, there's a lot to be positive about there, and things that are completely culturally appropriate. So some final best practices here: having an open mind. I know this is what may be quite obvious. I think it really is about checking yourself for any of your own personal experiences. I like to check myself on when I am thinking about what I find credible or not. Those pause moments when you're like, was she telling the truth? Was this, did that add up? Why am I thinking that? What am I really basing it on? And as a lawyer, I think, well, if I'm going to take this to trial or have an evidentiary hearing, I can't just be like, oh, I have a hunch about something, right? Like, you have to have a basis for putting something into evidence. So, just really, really checking yourself. And so, again, it's not just us, it's also the court, right? So, you're thinking, you can talk to us about that too. If you're like, oh, the judge seems to have this impression, and, I'm not sure where that's coming from, or maybe it's coming from this, or outside of court, I know that. This is all great stuff to just be talking about. And I think it's what allows us to be better advocates for our clients and ultimately go for a final order that we think is going to be best for this family. Again, we want something that can be a settlement where possible, as we know that reduces conflict for families. So these are just some strategies, and so I won't read through these either, but there are multiple meetings for most things, and so taking some time to reflect and really think about what else might be at play. Talk to your mentor, talk to your colleagues about it. This is what we do. We consider ourselves experts in the work, in the law, in the practice, but to be culturally humble and client-centered, we're constantly learning and constantly checking ourselves. We're never going to be experts in other people's culture. That's just not how it works. And so it's constant learning. It's getting it wrong. It's not about intentions. So we're all in this together in terms of trying to do best by our clients. So thank you for the abbreviated version of that. If you have questions about working with our client population, these cases, logistics, anything, I know we're sort of cramming in a bit into a short training, but please don't hesitate to ask at any point.
Portion of the training so that we can try to get my own schedule. I'm Marissa Gunn. I'm a senior supervising attorney with Children's Law Center. I'll do